Since the 17th century, Japan's criminal underworld has been controlled by a name that holds the power to strike terror in almost all who hear it: the Yakuza. As of 2024, over 20,000 registered Yakuza members take part in organized extortion, drug trafficking, loan sharking, illegal gambling and fraud, amongst other exploits. Each Yakuza organization across Japan is headed up by a Kumicho, or supreme kingpin, and today, none are more influential or powerful than the near-mythical name of Kenichi Shinoda. Maintaining a low profile in the modern world, the now 83-year-old crime boss has spread his influence wide across not only Japan, but the wider world throughout his career, and today, we will be exploring it in detail. Who is Kenichi Shinoda, the mysterious kingpin at the top of one of the most powerful Yakuza organizations in all of the country? How did he rise to power, and what makes him so influential? These are all questions that we will be answering today, alongside others. So sit back and relax as we take you to the back streets of Kobe to explore the life of one of Japan's most notorious criminal overlords. Before we explore the life and times of Kenichi Shinoda himself, let's take a step back to understand the origins of the Yakuza organizations in Japan and how they operate today. Firstly, the term Yakuza is used to refer to individual members of these criminal organizations. Together, they make up a series of distinct and well-organized syndicates across Japan. Otherwise known as Gokudo, which translates to the extreme path in English, the Japanese media have another term for them: Boryokudan, violent groups. The Yakuza themselves reject this moniker, describing themselves as Ninkyo Dantai, or chivalrous organizations. Throughout their history, they have maintained strict traditional practices and essentially act as feudal groups throughout Japan's major cities. While, throughout history, Yakuza members were traditionally depicted wearing kimonos, with fundoshi undergarments beneath, many members today opt to dress in sharp black suits, affording them an appearance as suave as it is menacing. The Yakuza are known for their traditional ritual practices, something that today is rarely seen in organized crime syndicates. Many members will adorn their torsos and limbs with huge, intricate tattoos, often depicting dragons or the folkloric masks of the mythical Oni. Yakuza members have also been known to engage in the practice of yubitsume, a form of ritual amputation of their own little finger. In Yakuza circles, this is seen as a way to atone for one's mistakes or transgressions, or can be handed out as a punishment for betrayals or disobedience. Just like the American Mafia, the Yakuza believe in tradition and loyalty, but the code followed by these shady dealers and street warriors is highly strict. Ties between individual Yakuza members are thicker than blood itself. These gangs operate as brotherhoods, with strict laws against infighting with members of the same group. While many Yakuza groups are involved in drug trafficking, they do not believe in taking drugs themselves, and those who do can face expulsion or even physical punishment. They bear chivalry in mind across all their operations, but only when it comes to their specific gang. A Yakuza must not disrupt the peace within their organization, and absolute loyalty must be sworn to those with positions of power. These codes of conduct are somewhat perpendicular to the code of Bushido, practiced by the historic samurai warriors of feudal Japan. The latter focused on honor, sincerity, loyalty, and mercy, only in a much more regulated and legal setting than the one adopted by the Yakuza. The Yakuza are thought to be able to trace their origins back to Japan's mid-Edo period, and likely arose gradually throughout the course of the 17th century. The Edo period was characterized by great turmoil across the islands of Japan, where feudal lords such as Tokugawa Ieyasu commanded vast armies of samurai to wrestle control of the country. This turmoil threw many societies into chaos, where crime became rife. Organized crime started to appear at this time in the form of takiya, or peddlers, who were typically seen as one of the lowest social groups in Japan during the Edo period. Dominating dark alleys and shady businesses in the streets of major cities, the takiya often moved large quantities of stolen or counterfeit goods. Eventually, the takiya would find themselves assembling into larger organizations and become highly structured. At the top, an oyabun or boss commanded the kobun or gang members who worked for him. Across the Edo period, however, something changed. The takiya began to become recognized as formal groups in Japan by certain governments, and the oyabun particularly started to climb the social ranks. Powerful oyabun soon found themselves treated like the honorable samurai warriors who protected clans. And with that status came even more power. After the Edo period, as the takiya transitioned to the Yakuza, we start to see individuals like Shimizu Jirocho appearing in the historical record, who was born in 1820. He is the most famous historical Yakuza member in all of Japan and is revered as something of a folk hero in the modern day, having been both a powerful crime boss and a key governmental figure during the Meiji Restoration. Today, the Yakuza still continue to operate across much of Japan, but their power is not as influential and widespread as it used to be, following crackdowns by the Japanese police and new styles of government. They continue to act as individual organized crime families, headed up by an oyabun, and partake in a variety of financial and violent crimes across the regions in which they operate. Today, the largest Yakuza organizations, sometimes known as families, are the Inagawa Kai, based in the Tokyo-Yokohama area, the Sumiyoshi Kai, which is a confederation of loosely governed smaller groups, and the largest, the Yamaguchi Gumi. It is with this final organization that the story of Kenichi Shinoda begins. The few photos that are available online of Kenichi Shinoda don't look like they show a feared legend of the organized crime world. In many of the photos, such as those featured in articles by Western newspapers in 2015, Shinoda is seen surrounded by cameras, as though he's a revered political or cultural figure. He wears a straight-brimmed brown leather fedora, a gray tartan trench coat, and a loosely fastened purple tie. While his eyes are obscured by broad black sunglasses, some of the photos almost seem to depict a sly smile as he walks along, unfazed by the media circus around him. You might even say he looks approachable. These photos depicted Shinoda at a troubled time in his career, however. He had just expelled thousands of members of his Yamaguchi Gumi syndicate for disloyalty and was facing a series of difficult decisions as they banded together to form a rebel group of Yakuza. At the time these very photos of Shinoda were taken, media across the world were talking about a potential imminent gang war, one that had the power to shake Japan's cities and streets to their core. How did we get to this point, though? Let's turn the clock back once more to find out exactly where Shinoda came from and how he rose to power as one of Japan's most feared and notorious organized crime bosses. Kenichi Shinoda was born on the 25th of January, 1942. In the midst of the Second World War that was threatening to tear the foundations of Japan apart. He was raised in the city of Oita, within the Oita Prefecture, situated on the island of Kyushu, Japan's smallest and the most southerly of the four main islands. While Oita is the largest city of its prefecture, it's not exactly the sprawling metropolis of Tokyo, or even Kobe, where Shinoda would spend much of his criminal career. In fact, Shinoda's upbringing was as humble as the city he came from. As a young man, he studied at and soon graduated from the Oita Prefectural Fisheries High School and obtained a job working within one of the local fisheries, obtaining an honest living in his hometown. Sometime around the year 1962, however, Shinoda decided he wanted to follow a different path in life. Whether he was dissatisfied with the job and lifestyle he was pursuing in Oita, or if he was lured in by the risks and riches of organized crime, we do not know. However, he soon left Oita and settled temporarily in the city of Nagoya. It was here that he became aware of, and, one way or another, affiliated with, the Yamaguchi Gumi Yakuza organization. Specifically, Shinoda's first foray into organized crime was with the Hirota Gumi, an affiliated branch of the former. Here, He rose in the estimations of the group's leaders, as well as his fellow gang members, but needed to make a decision when the group disbanded in 1984 due to the leader's retirement. Would he quit now and return to his old life in Oita? Of course not. After the Hirota Gumi disbanded, Kenichi Shinoda took his first steps towards seizing power, having seen how lucrative the world of organized crime could be. Along with his fellow Yakuza Kiyoshi Takayama, Shinoda founded the Kodokai, an organization that still stands today, affiliated with the Yamaguchi Gumi. Today, 4,000 individuals are estimated to swear their allegiance to this group, and it operates across 18 of Japan's prefectures. Shinoda was setting himself up for success even before he became a hugely prominent figure in Japanese organized crime. When he founded the Kodokai in 1984, the group had just 25 members, including Shinoda, and essentially acted as a financial mafia, as the Aichi Prefecture Police Department called it. They engaged in banking for the criminal underworld of Japan and dominated several industries within Nagoya, including security, show business, and real estate. Over time, the Kodokai would become more and more profitable and would even form large-scale partnerships with various legitimate organizations, including acting as the sole supplier of construction materials for Chubu Centraire International Airport. In recent times, the Kodokai have also monopolized the warehouses along the port of Nagoya and control various brothels in the city and its surrounding towns. Shinoda continued to make a name for himself following the establishment of the Kodokai, and even branched out into territories the Yamaguchi Gumi had never explored before, such as the Kanto region on the island of Honshu. His talents for expansion and domination did not go unnoticed, and what would essentially become his big break took place in 2005, after many long years of broadening the reach of the Kodokai. On the 29th of July of that year, Yoshinori Watanabe, the previous Don of the Yamaguchi Gumi, stepped down into retirement. Who better to take the reins than the man who had spearheaded such monumental expansion in recent years? Kenichi Shinoda was soon named Kumicho, or Supreme Kingpin, of the Yamaguchi Gumi, taking on the command of some 40,000 gang members. To this day, he has been able to hold this position and is universally considered to be the most powerful criminal in all of Japan. Upon being dubbed the new Supreme Kingpin of the Yamaguchi Gumi, Kenichi Shinoda relocated to the city of Kobe, the capital city of Hyogo Prefecture, and Japan's third largest port city, after Tokyo and Yokohama. This is the city that is known to bear the headquarters of the Yamaguchi Gumi, and all of Shinoda's dealings and criminal activities would revolve around this city from here on out. Immediately, it became clear that he wasn't interested in a high-profile, public lifestyle, and even made notable attempts to rid himself of the Godfather image associated with men of his status and career. When he was appointed as the new leader of the Yamaguchi Gumi, he opted to travel to his inauguration ceremony via train. The recent leaders before him had arrived in a limousine, accompanied by chauffeurs and bodyguards. Along the way, he supposedly even stopped at a ramen restaurant in Kobe city center, despite the banquet that was waiting for him at his ceremony. Despite these appearances, he has gone down in history throughout his career as being one of the most notoriously brutal Yakuza members, and has even spent long stints in prison for exceedingly violent crimes. Even before his days in charge of the Yamaguchi Gumi, Kenichi Shinoda was exercising brutality over his rivals and adversaries in the world of Japanese organized crime. While details are scarce surrounding the intricacies of the event in question, in the early 1970s, it has been reported that Shinoda spent 13 years behind bars for murdering a rival. This was not an ordered hit performed by one of his men, however, nor was it a simple shooting. Shinoda cut down the unnamed rival Yakuza boss with a katana, in true feudal fashion. The murder was just one part of the numerous Yakuza wars that have plagued the streets of Japan's major cities across the 20th century, and, specifically as leader of the Kodokai, Shinoda is believed to have been a prolific killer. One of the most notable gang wars Kenichi Shinoda became a part of was the Yama-Ichi War, which was waged across Japan's Kansai region between 1985 and 1989. The Yamaguchi-gumi would eventually emerge victorious in this dispute, which saw them fighting separatists belonging to the rebel Ichiwakai organization. The Ichiwakai were formed when Hiroshi Yamamoto was chosen as the Yamaguchi-gumi's acting boss following the death of a previous leader. A bloody power struggle emerged between the remaining members of the gang with the unhappy and jealous rebels who aimed to take power for themselves. The conflict spread to a nationwide Yakuza war soon after Masahisa Takenaka, the underboss of the Yamaguchi-gumi, was murdered by Ichiwakai hitmen, which led to the gang vowing revenge on the rebels. Shinoda was a staple member of the Yamaguchi-gumi during the war, and is believed to have played a part in several hits and battles throughout it. 36 prominent gang members were killed during the war, over the course of around 300 or so individual fights. Maintaining their absolute power over the Japanese underworld, Shinoda and the Yamaguchi-gumi prevailed, but the series of arrests that followed led to the gang's leadership becoming heavily fragmented. Initially, the surviving members of the Ichiwakai sought police protection, but were subsequently assimilated back into the wider gang following a peace accord, several years after the gang war ended. Shinoda's loyalty and displays of force during the Yama-Ichi War no doubt helped him achieve prominence within the Yamaguchi-gumi, leading to his eventual ascension as their overall leader in 2005. His rise to power quickly met a speed bump, however, when on the 4th of December 2005, just a few months after he became Supreme Kingpin, he was arrested for gun possession, for a crime that took place almost 10 years prior. Shinoda was apprehended by police in Kobe after the Japanese Supreme Court finally rejected an appeal he had made in 1997 against a weapons charge from that same year. Reportedly, in 1997, he was caught conspiring with one of his Yakuza bodyguards to use an illegal, unregistered pistol. He received 6 years in prison when his appeal was rejected, meaning that any plans he had as the new Supreme Kingpin of the Yamaguchi-gumi would need to be placed on hold. The future, it would seem, would become an uncertain roller coaster for Kenichi Shinoda and his close associates, as new laws, sanctions, and pressures piled onto him from not only Japan, but across the wider world as he attempted to expand his criminal enterprises. Kenichi Shinoda would eventually be released from prison in Tokyo in April of 2011, after serving just less than 6 years of his sentence. Upon his release, he immediately traveled back to his home in Kobe, where he has been running the Yamaguchi-gumi gang ever since. When he returned to his headquarters, however, a key person was missing. Kiyoshi Takayama, the very man who had helped him establish the Kodokai and rise to nationwide prominence as a notorious gang member, had been arrested for extortion just several months prior. Takayama was acting as the de facto leader of the gang in Shinoda's absence, but had been caught on suspicion of extorting over $400,000 worth from a business manager in Kobe's construction industry. Shortly after, Shinoda's third-in-command, Tadashi Iri, was also arrested for a separate extortion accusation. He was sentenced to 10 months in prison in March of 2011, leaving Shinoda essentially understaffed for his return to crime. Takayama would remain in prison until June 2012, when he was bailed out after ordering to pay a sum of 1.5 billion yen, equating to 19 million US dollars. It was shortly after Shinoda's release from Tokyo prison that he made a rare public media appearance, taking part in an interview with a Sankei-based newspaper in September of 2011. In the interview, Shinoda criticized Japanese police forces for a new set of rules that had been implemented while he was locked up, the Yakuza exclusion ordinances. This series of local laws, which began being implemented on the 10th of April in Japan's Fukuoka prefecture, aimed to limit interactions between Japanese businesses and organized crime groups within the country. Heavy fines and even prison terms became the new normal for citizens who wished to deal with the Yakuza, which made life much more difficult for Shinoda and his men. Not only were several of his best men in prison for extortion, his potential clients could join them if they dealt with his gang. In his interview with the newspaper in 2011, Shinoda described the introduction of the ordinances by the police as a policy of social discrimination. Wider criticism from across the country even went so far as to call the laws a human rights violation on the Yakuza's part. Further concerns arose about the violation of the freedom of expression amongst Japanese businesses and citizens who wished to do business with the gangsters. Further amendments to the ordinances would tighten restrictions even more closely, and the Yakuza are now banned from opening new offices anywhere in Tokyo, formerly an area of big business for several gangs. This is just one reason why the Yakuza do not hold as much power or prevalence as they do in Japan today. Shinoda's problems didn't end with these arrests and ordinances, however. In 2012, the Supreme Kingpin sought to expand his shady dealings outside of Japan, targeting citizens and businesses of the United States of America. Drug trafficking, human trafficking, money laundering, prostitution, and extortion soon found their way across the Pacific Ocean as Shinoda attempted to gain a foothold on the West. In 2012, however, the Obama administration caught wind of Shinoda's attempts to expand and immediately implemented a series of sanctions on him and his men. The United States Treasury Department froze the assets of the Yamaguchi-gumi in the country and prevented them from undertaking any further business there. This was a several billion-dollar hit to Shinoda. No longer could he rely upon this newfound international gold mine. What's more was that closer to home, the Japanese government was beginning to follow suit. Osamu Fujimura, Japan's chief cabinet secretary, noted that he would be watching the Obama administration's moves with a keen eye, and that he was exchanging information with the United States government regarding the Yakuza on a regular basis. It wasn't looking good for Shinoda and his men. His international markets were faltering, and now his homeland seemed to be ousting him out of his organization. Was there any hope? So why did Kenichi Shinoda find himself at the forefront of media attention once more in 2015? Why were those pictures of him, an aging man standing amidst cameras and bodyguards plastered over Western newspapers? Well, as it happens, Shinoda may find himself on the brink of war once more, and this time, he's the one commanding his men at the helm. In early 2015, Japanese media reported on internal turmoil within the Yamaguchi-gumi, which threatened to tear them apart. Shinoda himself had reportedly angered high-ranking Yakuza members by playing favorites within the gang, while traditionalist members disliked his methods of straying from original gang territory into overseas operations. By the end of 2015, pressure had reached a boiling point, and it looked like history was about to repeat itself. In September 2015, The Guardian reported on a mass exodus of Yakuza members from the Yamaguchi-gumi after thousands of members were kicked out for disloyalty to Shinoda. Instead of retreating into the shadows, these gangsters formed a new breakaway group, led by Kunio Inoue, a 67-year-old Yakuza veteran. Roughly 2,000 separatist members joined him in this new venture, who settled in the western port of Kobe, dangerously close to Shinoda's territory. Even more alarmingly, they seemed to be provoking the Supreme Kingpin. They opted to name themselves the Kobe Yamaguchi-gumi, even keeping the same logo used by Shinoda and his men. Shortly after the split, local police issued a warning that a potentially violent power struggle could emerge. The stage seemed to be set for a replay of the notorious Yamaichi War of the 1980s. And yet it didn't happen. What appeared to follow was essentially a Cold War. There are few reliable resources available to detail exactly what happened next, but there were no reports of rampant violence and wild shootings on the streets of Kobe in the years following the separation of the two groups of Yakuza. 6 months after the split, in March of 2016, there came reports that brief fights did occur as a 2-ton garbage truck was driven into a separatist office in Kobe, and there were some indications that street brawls had occurred between rival gang members in the city center. In one article from ABC News in Australia, Jake Adelstein, a journalist and author specializing in writing about the Yakuza, noted that there had been instances of Molotov cocktails thrown at opposing gangsters in Kobe, and that the police had no real interest in cracking down on the violence, as long as it doesn't spread to individuals outside of the Yakuza. In one quote given to ABC News, he said, "I think that until there's a civilian death, the police are going to sit back and watch them kill each other. Because that's how they view the thing. As long as the Yakuza are confining their violence to each other and not spilling over into the civilian population, it's like someone's doing their job for them. Other reports state that the police are getting involved, and that specifically by getting involved, they could tighten their already firm grip on the remnants of Shinoda's power. By making arrests and throwing the book at the gangsters, the police may be able to run what is left of Yakuza influence in Kobe into the ground. In the years that followed, there do not seem to have been outbreaks of large-scale violence between Yakuza groups in Japan, and Shinoda has not been arrested or otherwise charged with any criminal activity since. He seems to be a considerably less violent individual these days, and is not known to have been involved, at least not directly, in the deaths of any rival gang members during his time at the forefront of the Yamaguchi-gumi. However, there is, of course, much we do not know about this man, due to his secretive nature and underground operations. He is, after all, the most influential crime boss in all of Japan. He does remain in firm, consolidated power as the supreme kingpin of the Yamaguchi-gumi, though. Notoriously secretive, he almost never makes a public appearance or announcement, and has not been in the news to any large degree since the possible threat of gang warfare loomed in 2015 and 2016. As of the time this video was created, Shinoda's most recent news mention comes from the 16th of April 2025, when the Japan Times reported that the Yamaguchi-gumi have been hit with a 22.5 million yen lawsuit after 5 people were defrauded out of 18 million yen. Reportedly, Shinoda and several other senior Yakuza members have been given provisional orders by Fukuoka and Aichi Prefecture Police to refrain from obstructing legal proceedings. Whatever happens next, we will have to wait and see. Despite the power and notoriety that comes with the word Yakuza, it is not exactly an easy time to work in organized crime within Japan's major cities in this day and age. Police crackdowns have reduced the Yakuza to a shadow of their former selves, and while many members are still rich, influential, and dangerous, they simply are not as notorious in the grand scheme of things as they used to be. The same has begun to take place all over the world, however. In the United States, the Mafia is not quite as domineering and ever-present as it used to be, as legal proceedings and the arrests of key members within groups begin to spell lengthy prison sentences under ever-advancing laws. In Japan, these new laws, such as the ordinances brought about in the mid-2000s, put would-be criminals off of signing up to join the Yakuza, which has only created problems for the likes of Kenichi Shinoda, who need the manpower to stay as formidable as they once were. Shinoda may be the most powerful criminal in Japan, but his reign over the city of Kobe has been racked with turmoil and difficulty, largely due to these laws and policies brought about by the Japanese government. Now, at the ripe age of 83, he remains something of an enigma to the world outside of his immediate circle. The inner workings of his shady businesses and criminal activities go largely unreported in recent years, which, until his ultimate passing forces another shift in leadership, we may never hear about. For now, Shinoda and his close associates sit within a receding, but impossible to completely stamp out, criminal underworld in Japan, where silent movements marked with strict tradition can continue to make certain people huge amounts of money